ASEA's webvention and to train on what I consider to be a very important subject, sharing your story. The art of sharing stories that are clear, they're concise, and of course, compliant. Now, before we get into the story sharing training, I want to briefly visit the foundational concept of belief. I love Gandhi's perspective on belief. Your belief becomes your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. In other words, what you think about, you bring about. Your dominant thoughts and beliefs will ultimately determine where you end up in life, your destiny. So it's very common in network marketing to talk about the 4 fundamental beliefs in this industry. So the first is belief in your product, our redox signaling technology. The second, belief in your company, ASEA. The third is belief in the industry of network marketing. And of course, the most important belief of all is belief in you, belief in yourself. Now in this training, I just want to focus on belief in the product. There are 3 ways that you can build rock solid belief in our redox signaling technology. The first is your own personal experience. The second is the experience of others. And the third is the science behind the technology. Now, I believe that the truth is only a very small percentage of associates will actually develop their belief from the science. Now, for certain medical professionals, scientists, left brain analytical personalities, it can certainly play a role. But for the majority of us, we are more strongly influenced by our personal experience and, of course, the experience of others. Now, we know from our studies in ASEA that ASEA is having a positive impact on our bodies, whether we feel it or not. Now, of course, if you actually feel a difference, then you can naturally use that experience to build your belief. However, for most of us, if we don't have a big product experience, you have to be careful you don't fall into the trap that I call the testimonial trap. Now, this is where someone might say, well, if I get a great result on the product, then I'll build a business. The challenge with this thinking is there has never been a scientific study done on the population of 1. And to base your entire financial future in ASEA on one person's experience, even if that person is you, doesn't make sense to me. I am the poster child for someone who's been able to build a very successful business without having my own remarkable product story. How did I do that? I built my belief on the experience of others. It started with my dad, then my wife, and then lots and lots and lots of other stories. So a critical skill set that we want to develop is not just the skill of telling our own story, if we have one, but also the ability to tell other people's stories. Again, in a way that's clear, it's concise, and of course, compliant. Now, I'm sure you've heard the saying, facts tell, but stories sell. And it's often said, successful network marketers are simply highly paid storytellers. And I've certainly built my business on telling stories. For example, in the early days, we used to call the molecules immune system communicators and antioxidant activators. And I used to paint this picture of your antioxidants being like light bulbs, and these molecules were like the electricity that fired them up. People got it. They understood. Today, we talk about the importance of cell signaling. And I've helped a lot of people understand this concept by telling a very simple story. Imagine your home's on fire. You call the fire department. Now, they have the big red truck, the firefighters, the fire hose, everything they need to put out the fire. But if you have a bad cell signal, maybe only 1 bar, or the call keeps dropping, the fire department don't get the message, and your home goes up in flames. It's the same in our body. If your cells can't signal, little else matters. And ASEA Redox is the only supplement in the world to harness the power of the same molecules that your body uses for this critical signaling process. And for many people, it is the missing link to better health and vitality. So I tell that story and people get it. And then the launch of ASEA Via. We learn to tell the story of your body being like a house that is in a constant state of breakdown and repair. You need both the materials and the labor to get the work done. Where ASEA Via Nutritionals represent the materials, and of course ASEA Redox represents the labor. Together they form complete cellular health. Now look, I can talk ASEA science as best as the rest of them, but for the vast majority of people, it's these stories that allow me to have that aha moment, have that ability to have them have that aha moment where they go, I get it, I understand, this is amazing. It's rarely the science. It's almost always the stories. So when I talk about sharing stories, it's not just your testimonial. It's also the simple stories that we use to help explain our breakthrough technology. So let's turn our attention to testimonials. There's no doubt about it. The most powerful stories in ASEA are, of course, the lives changed. And it's important that we develop the skill set of being able to share these stories in a way that's clear, concise, and I'll say it again, compliant. Now, I've been involved in ASEA for over 11 years. And in that time, I've had the real privilege, the honor of being able to interview hundreds of associates and often help them shape their ASEA story. Over time, I developed a very simple testimonial formula, which I find works for about 90 to 95% of testimonials. And that's what I want to teach you here. First off, the goal is to create a very clear before and after picture. Now, you've all seen the weight loss ads, the big guy, the picture of the big guy holding out his big guy pants. And then there's an after picture with a much skinnier guy still holding out his big guy pants, but this time with plenty of room in them. Now, that's a very clear visual that you want to try and also create when you're sharing your ASEA story, okay, or the stories of others. You want to be able to create that same very clear before and after effect. So there's three parts to the before section: time, describe, and impact. For this amount of time, this is what I was experiencing, and this is how it impacted my life. And then the after section is a mirror image. After this amount of time of drinking ASEA Redox, this is what I experienced, and this is how it impacted my life. Now, before I go into more detail on the time, describe, and impact, allow me to add one more very important part to the testimonial formula. And this is the bridge that takes you from the before to the after. This is the person that introduced you to the product. So for this amount of time, this is what I've been experiencing, and this is how it impacted my life. Then a good friend of mine told me about this technology. Or then my sister called me, telling me that she had something that she believed I deserved to know about. Or somebody I hadn't talked to in years saw a post of mine on Facebook, and they reached out to me. You see, what you're doing with this bridge is you're validating the very business model that you're part of. You're pointing out that it's okay not to hear about this breakthrough technology from your doctor, or the guy who owns the health food store, or some Hollywood actor holding up a bottle of ASEA on a TV ad. You're demonstrating that word-of-mouth marketing works. So for this amount of time, this is what I was experiencing, and this is how it was impacting my life. Then an old friend of mine who I hadn't spoken to in years just reached out to me and said, would I be open to learning about a breakthrough health technology? They sent me a couple of videos, I listened to some other people's experiences, and I decided to try the product for myself. After this amount of time, this is what I began to experience, and this is how it has impacted my life. Okay, let's dig a little bit deeper into this time, describe, and impact. So time. When you're talking about time, use lengths of time and not actual dates. The moment you start using dates, the listener is going to be doing what I call calendar calculations in their head. And they may stop paying attention to the story, or even worse, not get the full impact of the story. So here's an example. In June of 1997, I was involved in a car accident, and ever since then, I've been experiencing discomfort in my neck and my lower back. Just never seemed to go away. Then in April of 2020, my brother told me about ASEA's signaling technology. So let me ask you, are you doing some calendar calculations? Is that 13 years ago, or is it 23 years ago? See, just keep it super simple. 23 years ago, I was involved in a car accident, and ever since then, Same idea when you're sharing the after side of the story. I started drinking ASEA November 30th, 2018, and by February 1st of 2019, I noticed I was sleeping better and had more energy. So how are the calendar calculations going? Is that 4 months? Is it 3 months? Well, wouldn't it be a lot simpler to say, after 10 weeks of drinking ASEA Redox, I noticed, and then describe the benefits. So avoid dates and calendar calculations, and simply state periods of time whenever possible. Okay, let's talk about describe. Time, describe, and impact. The golden rule with describe is never mention the disease or medical condition. Believe it or not, it is much, much more impactful to describe what's going on than to actually name the challenge. For example, I was exhausted all the time, and I had tremendous discomfort in my muscles and my joints. You see, it doesn't really matter what that condition's called. It's how it affects you that's important. And this brings us to impact. Now, the impact part of the story is the most important part of all. It's the human element that ties us all together. It's the part where the people who may have never experienced what you've experienced can actually still relate to your story. The discomfort was so great that even getting a hug from my grandchildren was painful. My brain fog was so bad that my wife would speak 3 sentences to me, and I was lucky if I could even grasp 2 words. I was so exhausted by the end of the day, I had no energy to play with my kids or read them that bedtime story. It was so frustrating not to be able to be there for my girls. Or I was becoming so forgetful that I would stand in front of the refrigerator, not remember why I was there. I would get in my car, not remember where I was going. I'd get to the point where my sisters wouldn't let me drive my nieces and nephews around. Now, the same is true in the after section. I can now get down on the floor and actually play with my grandkids and squeeze them goodbye at the end of the day. I can think clearly again. It was like a light switch coming on. I was able to hold conversations with my wife, something I hadn't been able to do for 23 years. Or I'm no longer in bed 17 hours a day. I'm out biking, hiking, living life with my girls. I feel like supermom again. Or finally, after about 4 months, my thinking got clearer. My memory started improving. Not only am I back driving my car again, but I've gone on to write 3 books of my memoirs and my experiences in life. Now, by the way, these are all real examples I'm sharing with you here. Snippets of different people's stories in ASEA. Lives changed. So at this point, let me bring it all together. And I'm going to use my wife's story as an example. So during the birth of my first daughter, my wife went through a really tough pregnancy, a long labor and a difficult delivery. For the first 10 months after the birth, my wife was left with tremendous discomfort in her lower back and her hips and down her leg. We tried all sorts of things, chiropractors, acupuncture, physical therapy, every kind of antioxidant formula you could imagine, and nothing worked. Just lifting the baby out of the bath or pushing the buggy would cause her tremendous discomfort. Then someone I'd met in a previous business reached out to me and told me about this signaling technology. So we bought some product, cracked open a bottle. My wife took 2 ounces in the morning and another 2 ounces in the afternoon. And I kid you not, the next morning she woke up with 0 discomfort, the first time in 10 months. The next day, she was in the gym working out again. She was finally able to be the mom that she'd always wanted to be. Time, describe, and impact. Now, I get that some stories are going to be a little bit more involved. They're not as simple as my wife's experience. However, you should still be able to use this testimonial formula as a strong guideline for your own testimonial. And this brings me to a couple of tips. Now, my wife, Tanya, is an avid reader. And anytime there's a movie version of a book, I'm always going to hear her say, the book was better. Well, yeah, the movie's about 2 hours long, and the book took a week to read. The book is always going to have more twists and turns and intricate detail. When it comes to sharing our stories, many people feel the need to share the book version, like a biography, with so many twists and turns and details that the actual before and after story gets lost in the muddle. You want to learn to discard the unnecessary details and develop a very concise screenplay version. And this is probably where I've had the biggest impact as a coach, not because I'm emotionally detached from all of those little details. It's easier for me to say, hey, scrap that part, leave it out, it's not important. So if you find yourself still sharing your lengthy, confused, muddled biography version of your ASEA story, then give someone permission, someone you trust, give them permission to help you get rid of the fluff and actually get to the point. Cut it down from a biography to a screenplay. And when you do this, your before and after story will be much clearer. The picture suddenly comes into focus and you deliver a much stronger punch that actually hits home. You connect and the listener gets it. Now, as a rule, I would say if you're spending more than 3, maximum 5 minutes telling your story, it's probably going too long. And even once you've developed a nice, tight screenplay version, you want to take it to the next level and develop a shorter version as well, your elevator pitch. Think of this like the little movie trailer that's leaving the listener wanting more. Here's an example. After the birth of my first daughter, my wife was left with tremendous discomfort in her back, her hips, and down her leg. After only 24 hours in ASEA, she woke up with zero discomfort. It was like flicking on a light switch. And that's her 13-second trailer. Now, you could then add, and this was after trying countless other products. This is when we realized that ASEA Redox can do things that no other product can do, because it contains things that no other product contains, these powerful signaling molecules. Hey, does that sound like something you might like to know a little bit more about? If I sent you a short video, would you take a few minutes to watch it? So you want to develop the skill of telling your story and the story of others, and then find your favorite 5 stories and practice them and get good at delivering them. As Trish Schwenkler says, get them down cold so you can deliver them hot. Now remember, folks, the people that you think are often the most talented, they rarely are. Just because you see someone and they're really good at something, you think that it's all about talent. Guys, I'm going to suggest they've just worked a little harder at their skill than most. Please do not confuse talent with practice. Now, in closing, let me say this. I believe ASEA is destined to become one of the great legacy companies in the network marketing industry. Chuck Funke, our CEO, he says that there are levers that you can pull in a company to get fast growth, but they're not the same levers that you pull to get legacy growth. In an industry that is full of here today, gone tomorrow, bottle rocket companies, it's important that our time in ASEA will be counted in decades and not in years. In a conversation with Tyler Norton recently, he said to me, Allan, I will not consider this business a success unless your kids are getting a check from ASEA. And I intend to be around for a very long time still. As exciting as all that is, it's important to understand that the legacy of this great company is not just Chuck's responsibility or Tyler's responsibility. It's the responsibility of all of us. It's our company to police and protect. So when you say that ASEA Redox is not a treatment or cure for any disease or medical condition, please mean it. If you see someone that's been a little overly enthusiastic with medical terms or making medical claims, speak gently in their ear and perhaps send them to a recording of this training, sharing your story. So in closing, I've been here pretty much since the beginning. And over the last decade, I have seen countless lives changed, both physically and financially, with the ASEA technology and opportunity. It's been the most rewarding decade of my life. And yet I believe what lies ahead of us will make the next 10 years, will make the last 10 years look like we've been standing still. There has never been a better time to be part of the great ASEA adventure. I want to thank you for your time and attention here today. I can't wait till we all actually get to see each other in person, hopefully in the very near future. Thank you.